Don't get me wrong, I really appreciate the intentions and aspirations of director Neill Blomkamp. It's not every day that a filmmaker stands before Hollywood and says, I intend to make stylistic, hard-hitting, gritty sci-fi action movies that, more importantly, serve to explore deeper social themes through the worlds they establish. I get what he's trying to do with his films, and I can only commend the man for having the balls to do it all through original screenplays. His 2011 debut, District 9, is really great. An ultra-violent, clever sci-fi with a story to tell and something to say. Its subject matter was dark, its protagonist complex, it had terrific effects, and the story was involving as hell. It wasn't flawless by any stretch, but it proved that Blomkamp had something special in him, and immediately earned him a spot amongst some of the best sci-fi directors in the business today. Unfortunately, his next movie, Elysium, couldn't quite live up to the standards he'd set himself. Some people liked it, but I just couldn't. It had a great premise and a good cast, just look at who was leading it, but the social themes, similar to those that made District 9 resonate with audiences, this time shooting for a rich versus poor type thing, this time became horribly undermined by the sheer obviousness of the script, by which I mean goddamn did that movie beat me over the head with its subject matter so much that I felt like I was watching an after-school special for children, and any potential it might have had to alternatively be an enjoyably fun action movie instead was otherwise squandered by some truly awful, vomit-inducing camera work. I mean seriously, someone get that cameraman a tripod. And when I started seeing the trailers for CHAPPiE, which looked like the very same urban, futuristic robots thing we'd already seen twice before from Blomkamp, I started to wonder if this really is all he has to offer. There are a few noticeable flaws he appears to have as a storyteller, but the one that seems to be getting worse and worse is his use of subtlety, which is to say his movies really aren't that subtle at all. And boy is that ever the case with this one. Not only does CHAPPiE contain the very same tendencies to be as blunt with its allegorical themes as the script for Elysium, thereby robbing the viewer of an intelligent screenplay that gives its audience any sort of credit, but there was no way I could have predicted the sheer awfulness of the dialogue, the directionless narrative, or the thinly sketched, morally reprehensible cartoon characters that inhabited its confused, mismanaged story. And while noting that yes, CHAPPiE himself does look incredible thanks to some awesome work from the visual effects team, if you've seen the trailer, you already knew he was going to look good. It's nowhere near enough to save what is at best a subpar, dumbed down Robocop wannabe, and undoubtedly Blomkamp's worst movie. Speaking of, as I sat watching the film constantly bash me over the head with its pandering, this is what the movie is meant to be about, visual aids, I became momentarily depressed when it occurred to me, God, there will never be a robotics movie as smart, self-aware, or faithful towards the intelligence of an audience as to not literally just spell everything out for them as the original Robocop ever again, will there? That makes me sad. And no, it's not lost on me that we're basically doing the exact same song and dance here as we were doing this time last year. See, CHAPPiE could easily have been one of those good about-something movies, but clearly the development of the flick has come about completely backwards. Movies like Robocop didn't start out as a satirical viewpoint of fiscal conservatism being pushed to its extremes, it started out as a movie about a dude that gets turned into a robot and shoots bad guys. And so the merits of it also turning out to simultaneously be about those things, and more when finally watched, then gave it an unexpected level of intelligence and depth, and elevated the flick to being more than just about a dude that gets turned into a robot and shoots bad guys. Hell, you don't even have to look at sci-fi for this evidence. Monsters Inc. didn't start out as a vehicle to explore subversive themes of conspiracies and exploiting the helpless for an efficient energy source, it started out as a fun movie about a kid entering the world of monsters. See, there's nothing wrong with making your movie about something, but if you start off with theme only, instead of an interesting concept or premise, then all it's going to do is come off as preachy. Not to mention the fact that theme without story doesn't work. CHAPPiE is the bad kind of about something movie. It doesn't quite know what narrative it wants to tell, where it wants to go, or what message it wants to get across. All it knows is that it wants the viewer to sit through a long, drawn-out film focusing on a clueless robot being misguided, judged, and mistreated, and feel sorry for it because ain't that topical. Our premise? In an effort to reduce the notoriously high crime rate in Johannesburg, the South African government purchases a new cutting-edge series of armor-plated semi-AI operated attack robots from American weapons manufacturer Tetraval that proved to be an instant success. Yeah, I was not kidding when I referenced the Robocop remake. At the company's new Johannesburg plant, the robot's designer Dion Wilson, played by Dev Patel, attracts the attention of Vincent Moore, played by Hugh Jackman, whose own design, Moose, gets ridiculed in favour of more of the same AI officers. When Wilson reckons he can one-up himself and successfully creates a program that would achieve the first sentient AI, as in a robot that can feel emotions, be creative, make its own choices, etc., but isn't granted permission to test it, he essentially walks out of the factory, because apparently this weapons manufacturing facility seems to be the only one in the world to have non-existent security, with stolen parts from a recently damaged police bot to reassemble it himself at home and test the program on it outside of the company's jurisdiction. Little does he know, however, that a group of gangsters plan to kidnap him and force him to build the robot and test his new program so that they can use it instead in a big heist. Of course, the program works, and the new sentient robot CHAPPiE becomes a fast-learning AI going from childhood to adulthood, whilst being swayed by several contrasting parental figures, and has to learn a harsh truth that the world he lives in isn't always a nice one. And if CHAPPIE's favourite book just so happening to be The Black Sheep wasn't blatant enough, don't worry, they also decided he needed a bright orange sticker on his forehead that reads, Reject. What's funny is how the movie spends so much time going on about freedom, free will and humanity, yet has every single character acting as if they just walked off of the set of Tom and Jerry. I can understand why they thought having the band Arntward play prominent roles in the movie, even acting as CHAPPIE's adoptive parents, could work well, considering the musicians themselves model their lifestyles around Zeph, which apparently follows the rules of not caring what the world thinks of you, but the two themselves aren't particularly good actors, and the characters they play are extremely annoying and unlikable. None of which is helped by the fact that a majority of the runtime is filled with scenes of them moulding CHAPPIE into a complete arsehole who commits crimes, points guns and throws ninja stars at innocent civilians, which completely erases any possibility of caring about him when the shit finally hits the fan later on. Which is a shame because Sharlto Copley does a pretty awesome voice job in the role. The only player in the movie that seems mildly three-dimensional is Patel as Wilson, but he keeps jumping in and out of the movie and gets surprisingly little to do, which is strange considering the movie not only starts out with him as the main protagonist, but also makes a point to keep referring to him as being CHAPPIE's maker. And just in case it wasn't incredibly obvious which role Jackman would play in the movie, well, besides being the epitome of every dumb, bully, jock cliche we've seen before, whilst also being a super smart engineer at the same time and a hardcore Christian, well, don't worry, the film also has him constantly handling an American football, staring evilly at Patel every time he appears in shot, pointing a gun right at his head in the middle of the office to then just say it was a joke and, geez, chill out man. And his robot is essentially the exact same bulky, tail-sucking America thing that Ed 209 already rang home much better in 87. You know,
just in case we were too stupid to figure out who the bad guy was.
Don't even get me started on the fact that they literally have just ripped off the design of Ed 209. That's probably the biggest letdown for me. Jackman was the one thing I was mildly interested in seeing, since this is not the role he typically finds himself in, but he just looks completely lost throughout. The film disregards the interesting rivalry it sets up with him and Patel having a clash of philosophies for more and more tedious, uninvolving sequences of CHAPPIE doing all the wrong things. And I'm not usually much of an advocate for villain sidekicks, but I would gladly have taken one here instead of having to watch Jackman awkwardly talk to himself in every scene. Boy did that come off as silly. I'd love to discuss the story if I felt at all like it was cohesive enough to warrant legitimate discussion, but it's not. The movie starts out with a news story talking about the impact CHAPPIE had, in similar fashion to District 9, which completely fails to tell us anything about the impact he was supposed to have had on this world, and then also never comes up again. We've got a jumbled, directionless narrative filled with unlikable characters, and this means that when the action does finally start up, it comes in far too late. By that point, there's nothing to think about and no one to root for. That being said, its out of nowhere stupidly preposterous finale might actually elevate the movie's quality to being so bad it's funny, and that may redeem a little something for some viewers. With around 20 minutes to spare, the movie suddenly decides it wants to be transcendence, and if nonsensical endings are anything to go by, boy does it exceed in that arena. With a clearer story and more proactive, likeable characters to inhabit it, CHAPPIE could have turned into something really great, but as it stands, it's boring and it's clueless. But it also could have been just that. Sadly, it's its manipulative approach that ultimately makes it worth slamming. Try writing a story next time. Hey, is anyone else getting flashbacks at the moment? Yeah, maybe we all cheered a little too soon. Cheers for watching guys, and as always if you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel.